This true-to-life account captures the most violent crimes that took place on the streets of D.C. during the 80s, the 90s, and present. This historical, critical acclaimed video memoir was created when D.C. was labeled as the murder capital of the world. A time when D.C.'s notorious hitman Wayne Silk Perry was terrorizing communities with numerous murders, when the shotgun stalker was driving around and shooting and killing innocent people.
I want to take you guys in a time when things were so bad for us growing up. I mean, violence, gunshots, fights, people dying left to right, people getting raped and beat and sodomized. It was just a tough time. And so I just want y'all to go down memory lane with me and learn about this trauma, because it haunts me every day. Every night I have dreams about the evilness.
A reality program that might actually save some kids' lives. Chris Berry of ABC News Nightline. In the midst of silence, a voice speaks out.
Now, what black person you know got an income of $1,500?
I wanted to definitely start the therapy session for the new year. I think that therapy is basically where we make it. We can get therapy off of arts and crafts. We can get therapy talking to friends. We get therapy talking to professionals. We can get therapy using our hands. We can get therapy all types of ways. And I think that therapy is definitely important. I see a lot of YouTubers get therapy by talking to the camera, talking to their audience. And the audience have a lot to say. And you meet some smart people in the audience, for real. I think that therapy is very important as an adult, because everything that happens to you as a child, that's who you become as an adult. So they say that if you raise a child the right way, they will not depart from it. I'm going to try my best not to cuss in therapy session, y'all. So we're going to have some rules of therapy. No cursing needs to be a rule. Expressing ourselves needs to be a rule. Telling the truth, being candid needs to be a rule. So those are our rules for therapy session. But I don't know who this can help, but it may help somebody. It may help you when raising your children now. It may help you because then you know that half of the people is just going to be glad it wasn't them. But you never know. The rest of the people may say, you know what, I went through the same thing, and it messed me up like that too. So then you can understand my behaviors, my triggers, and why I act the way I act now by the past. So we're going to all start at the beginning. So from the beginning, I was born to a half white woman and an African man in 1984 in the mean streets of DC, okay? I can go all the way back as far as I need to. I remember being in second grade. I remember being in pre-K, Miss Burgess' class in pre-K. Around that time, my mother was dealing with this new guy. So as far as my dad is concerned, my mother said she didn't want to be with him no more. She didn't like how trifling he was, and he was cheating on her and stuff like that. So she ended up breaking up with him. So I don't even remember my dad really even being there. I remember seeing him a couple times. Well, I remember the first time seeing him, and he came to visit us, and he kissed me in my mouth. And I told my mother I was very uncomfortable with that, but she didn't do anything about it. So she was just like, oh, whatever, it's your father. So I'm like, but I don't even know this man because he hasn't really been around like that. I remember being in my room crying because he told me he was going to come back to see me, and he didn't come back. And around that time, I don't know if you guys remember this song that said, why did you lie to me when I knew that it was real. Yeah, I used to sing that song in my head that I can still remember because he always lied and told me he was coming. He didn't come. So I didn't see him like that. So my mom had met this other guy, and I remember him coming around, and my father told me he was his enemy because they had gotten into a fight and they was beefing for a while, and my mother still dated him anyway. She got pregnant by him. I remember seeing my mother. He beat my mother. He was stalking her. He would hide in the bushes. When she come home, he would be like, jump out the bushes and beat her up and ask her where the hell was she at. Even though she had us with her, my mother had 3 children. I have 2 brothers. Both have psychosocial disorders. Well, you could say that, but the last one is mentally retarded and autistic. And the older one, I'm in the middle. The older one has a bipolar, schizophrenia, a whole bunch of disorders. So it seemed like I was the only sane child. You know, I had my depression, but for the most part, I was sane. So I remember my mother getting beat by her boyfriend. I remember waking up, and we was in a room. We lived with my great-grandmother and my mother. It was a 2-bedroom. My mother, my 2 brothers, and me. We had a room, and I was sleeping in bed with my mother, my little brother, my big brother on top. And he would always wake up with nightmares and screaming. I don't know why, but my mother's boyfriend would come over there and he would have sex with her, put a sheet up on the bunk bed and have sex with her, and I could see all this going on. I knew it wasn't right, but what could I do? I was like 3 years old or 4. I was about 4 at that time, and I just was praying that my mother get rid of this guy because he was very, very toxic and he was crazy. You could tell he was messed up. And so one day, I found out that he had robbed a car and he went to jail. They gave him 12 to 36 years in prison in Lawton Maximum Facility in Virginia. And I was just like, oh, thank God he's gone, because my mother was getting tortured by him. I remember my mother having a job at that time. She was working at the Chevy Chase house on Connecticut Avenue in Washington, D.C. And it was like a home for the elderly, like a assisted living facility. And she wasn't making much, so she was also on welfare. And the welfare people found out. I don't know, it seemed like they found out quicker then than they do now, but they found out that she was working, so they came to the house, knocked on the door. I remember answering the door, and they said they was looking for her, and they was going to take her to jail for welfare fraud. They ended up catching up with her, and she went to jail for a while. And then when she came out, we was still being raised by my grandmother, my great-grandmother. My grandmother didn't live with us, my great-grandmother, and she was in her 60s or whatever. But I remember this lady like it was yesterday. She was really, really big, and she had long white hair, and she hated black people. And every time I would come to her room, she'd be like, bitch, get the fuck out of here. I can't stand your ass. And she would curse at me, and I'm sorry, I forgot we wasn't supposed to be cursing. Beep that out. So she would just scream at me and yell at me, and she would just be in the room. She was so evil. And the only one that she really liked was the older brother because he was more lighter. But I was dark when I was a child, so she couldn't stand me. She used to say all the time, I can't stand a black around your neck. So by her hating me, and my grandmother was even twice as worse than my great-grandmother. By them hating me, I end up hating myself. And they used to always ask my mother, why would you have a baby by that ugly ass nigga? You know, say things like that about my dad. And not to mention, let me not skip over this part. I was born with a dislocated hip. My mother was using drugs when she had me. She was using weed, and you might not look at weed like it's a drug because it's from the earth, but it definitely affected me. One of my legs was longer than the other, so they had to put a metal rod in my hip to stunt the growth, to make it slow down so it won't be going past the other leg. So I walk with a limp now. Over the years, it got worse and worse and worse because the fat and the weight gain broke the metal rod in half. So one of the metal rods is down in the joint bone, and in the bone. The other one is in the rotary bone. So it's hard for me to even open up my legs. It doesn't stop me from having sex though, because I can get it. But they said that I would never be able to have sex and I would never be able to have children. And then I had an issue too, that I never had a period. So they said I wasn't gonna be able to have children because I couldn't have a period. So all 5 of my babies are miracles. But I just wanted to let you know that, you know, I had that issue and used to get teased when I was a child because I couldn't crisscross applesauce. You know, I couldn't do the same things that the other children can do. But as far as sports, I still played basketball. I still did ballerina. I still did everything that I could, even in spite of my disability. So I even forget about it sometimes because I did not let it control me. But I got teased with my family too because of it, because they was trying to basically say that the black genes was fucked up, you know, why I came out like that. Excuse my cussing. I said I wasn't gonna cuss. I gotta get it together. But my grandmother, the older one, the great grandmother, she used to stay in that room all the time when I was a child, and I used to go in there and see her doing crazy stuff. This one time, I heard the lady yelling down the hallway, and I was like, why is that lady screaming? I always seen the lady going to the hospital all the time with the ambulance, but I never knew why she was, like, I didn't know who was her family. I was like, what is this lady? Like, nobody's there for her. The ambulance come and get her. It just looked weird to me as a child, and I was just trying to figure it out. And so one day I hear her screaming, and like she was screaming for a long time. So I ran in the room to tell my grandmother that she was screaming, and I seen my grandmother playing with a doll baby, and she was sticking tacks in the doll baby's head, and she said, get the fuck out of here. And I left out, but when I end up seeing my mother, I end up telling my mother what happened, and my mother said, I know she was gonna do that. She killed her sister. And I said, what are you talking about? At this point, I'm 4 years old. I don't know what's going on. She was like, she killed her sister. That was her sister that lived up the hallway. And my whole thing was, why didn't you tell me that was her sister? Why didn't I meet her? Like, that would be my great aunt. And nobody told me anything. And so right then I knew that my family was divided and that there was no unity. And everybody basically hated each other. And I was just like, this is so weird. But at that tender young age, I knew I did not belong. And I always used to say, I would like to go and see where my dad is from. I would like to go there. I don't want to be here because this is a weird place. And everybody's weird here. And I remember some cousins coming down. My uncle actually just passed about a month ago. And he had came down from Virginia Beach, and I was thinking that was weird that everybody lived in the same vicinity, but he lived further away. Like, why did he move away? What was so bad about the family that you didn't want to stay there? So that's what I was thinking. And so I remember all the cousins coming, and they coming to visit us for the first time. This is my first time meeting them. And he had a daughter, and his daughter was about 15, and my uncle was 15. And so all the rest of them was older, 17, 18, you know, they was older, all the cousins. And they said they was going out and they was going to go to the Ibex. If y'all don't know, if you know about the Ibex. And that day was really tragic because my mother went and she was partying, and the chandelier unraveled, fell down, and cut her whole back open. So we had that issue going on, but we was at home with the 15-year-olds, And so they told us to go in the room and go to take a nap. And I just so happen to get up and I go into their room and I see my cousin 15 and my uncle 15. I see them on the floor having sex with each other. And I said, something ain't right about this. Then I seen it happen more and more. It became more apparent that my family practiced incest. And I remember that same uncle, he was coming over our house, and he wanted to eat spaghetti because he was really fat and he loved food. And so my mother said, I'm gonna cook some spaghetti today. And he said, oh, I want to go home with you. And so my mother was out flagging down a cab. You know, that time you had to stand in the middle of the street and flag down the cab. So she was flagging down the cab, and we were standing up under the balconies so we couldn't get wet from the rain. And so him at being 15 and I'm 4, he came behind me. He started feeling on my butt and touching me inappropriately. So I was just like, wow, why would you do that to me? And I was like, this is really weird. Like, children are born with sense. They born knowing what's right from wrong. I mean, of course, you got to reiterate it, but they know from the beginning. I knew it was wrong. Nobody had to tell me that my uncle touching me was wrong. So then I kind of like was like, okay, I can't be around him alone because he might touch me in a wrong fashion and hurt me. And I'm just like, I can't do this. And my mom, she will always bring him over there. And I'm like, after he touched me, I'm like, I don't want him here no more. And I remember telling my mother one time she was bringing him over, and I said, my uncle's name was Chucky. And I said, Mommy, please don't leave me, because Chucky got something up his sleeve. And if you leave, then I can't sleep, because Chucky going to put his hands on me. And my mother looked at me, and she was like, girl, go in the room. And it was like she didn't even get what I was saying. I was hurting, like scared. And I'm telling her, I don't want you to leave me with this man. But because incest was so normal, nobody cared. And it was like, I felt that I was the only different one. I felt like the oddball. I always felt like the outcast. I always felt like nobody thinks like me and see what I see. Like I don't belong here. I didn't feel no sense of belonging at all in that family. And so my mother told me one day, my mother used to, like, okay, let's really get to the facts that my mother never was home. So basically, I was taking care of myself. My great-grandmother would do stuff for my brother, but she wouldn't do stuff for me and the little one because of our skin complexion, because the color of our skin. That's basically it, because it was no other reason for her to treat us like she did. And so my brother, well, when my mother used to leave, we didn't have food. I can look in the refrigerator, and the only thing being in the refrigerator is some peanut butter. I can look in the cabinets. We might have some grits. So my grandmother used to eat grits all the time, and she would put tomatoes in the grits, and she would eat it like that. So I ended up eating that, and we would always eat Oriental oodles and noodles. They call it Indomie in Africa. So we will always eat that. And I just was like, I'm tired of eating the same thing. So my brother said my grandma was sending him to the store. And I was like, can I go to it? He said, yeah. And I went and I started stealing. And I would put the stuff in my shirt. And I got caught by an undercover police officer. And he came out the store. He said, I seen y'all stealing. Your mother let you do that? And he said, I'm going to take you to jail. And he was telling my brother, because he was older, he said, I know you put her up to it, so I'm going to just take you to jail. He was like, no, I didn't. And so he ended up calling my mother and letting her know. But my mother was staying with this new guy that she had met. And he didn't live far from my school, honestly. Like, matter of fact, that's crazy. I had changed schools by the time I was in 3rd grade. But I don't want to skip out on that. But just know that my mother was never home. And her school her house, the house that she was staying in was across the street from my school, and I still didn't see my mother. And I remember people coming to my school telling me, you know, your mother watched me for the weekend. My mother paid her, she watched me for the weekend. And I'm like, well, why she not watching her own children? I couldn't understand that for nothing. So I always felt alone, felt lonely. So by this time, my mother come home. You know, she had already went to jail and everything. And she was just like, okay, well, let me stay home a little bit more with my children. And I thought that, okay, now I have my mom. And she told me that she needed more money. She was like, she didn't want to work no more. The welfare is a little bit, I think it was $298 at the time. And she was like, she needed more money. So what she did was, she told me that my uncle, no, I had a cousin, and I used to call him Andre the Giant, because he was really, really tall. He was about 6'7". He had real big hands, real big feet, and he was just big. And so she told me that what's going to happen is he's going to come stay with us, because he just got out the mental hospital. Out of St. Elizabeth Mental Hospital is in Washington, D.C. off of Martin Luther King Avenue. Like, y'all know I have the best memory long term, but short term, what I just said, I don't remember. It's crazy. But I remember everything that happened when I was a kid. And these things haunt me every night in my sleep. I have dreams, and it's really bad. Nightmares. I don't know how to control it. The stuff that happened to me as a child, and stuff that was going around, the fact that all my family is dead, the fact that all my friends are dead, maybe have a handful left, you know, that type of stuff messes me up. So that's why I end up holding on to people. When I finally find somebody, I tend to hold on to them as long as I can, because of the lack of people, like abandonment issues. People leaving all the time, but something happening to where they now gone, you know. So, what was I at? That's what I'm telling you. I forget that, but I don't forget what happened. Okay, so my cousin Andre came to stay with us, and Andre, my grandmother told me before he came, she sat down and talked to me. This is my grandmother, not my great grandmother. My great-grandmother never talked to me before. She just cussed me out every time she seen me. Get the fuck out of the house. You know, get the room, leave. But my grandmother talked to me, but she was just evil to me. She hated my guts. I tell you, my grandmother fucking hated me. And I still, like, to this day, don't know why. I don't know. I know that because I'm black, but I don't know why is it that fucking serious, you know? So she had sat down beside me. She was talking to me. She said, your cousin Andre is coming to move with y'all. He's gonna be staying with y'all for a while because your mother don't have enough money. And Andre get a check every month. I think the check was like $400 and some dollars. It wasn't much, but he had just came out of mental institution, and he needed a place to stay, and my mother needed the money. So they moved Andre in, and she tells me that stay away from Andre because Andre's father raped my sister, my little sister, when we was kids. So they pedophiles, and they like playing with little girls. Like, it seems like to me that as long as they was the same age, sex was cool, but because this was a little girl and he was a grown man, it was wrong. So she was like, just stay away from him because it's in the family. It runs in the family. And I'm trying to figure out, how am I supposed to stay away from a grown-ass man? Like, how? We in this 2-bedroom apartment. And the 2-bedroom apartment, I swear it had to be like, not even 800 square feet. It had to be smaller than that. And it was like, they put Andre in our room, the room that we used to stay in, me and my mother and my two brothers. They put Andre in our room and told us that we had to sleep in the living room. Mind you, my mother never was home. My brother, he was battling his own situation because he had issues, and I guess depression was bad for him. You know, I was depressed too, but not as bad as my brother was. I used to have to watch my little brother. He was autistic and he used to run away a lot. And I put him on the bus. I had a lot of responsibilities at 4. No, by this time I'm 5. I can remember being 5 and having the responsibility to take care of my little brother, and nobody else was there for me. And my older brother used to go and try to pump people's gas to get money, try to go to the gym and meet people and go out and talk to people. So he wasn't really there either. So me being sane, and I needed something to stimulate my mind as a child. It got so bad that I'm gonna post a picture of picture day, and how I looked during picture day because my mother wasn't there to do my hair. When I say she was always gone, she was always gone. And then I used to wear her clothes to school. No underwears, no nothing, because nobody was washing clothes. So I would just find outfits of hers and just put it on and just go to school like that. I ended up changing my hair. My hair was really long and pretty, and I put a Bantu perm in it. And then when it was time to wash the perm out, I washed it out with dandruff shampoo. And it changed my whole texture. My hair had never been the same since. You know, trying to just raise myself, trying to figure life out, because I didn't know any better. So when Andre moved in, Andre was like a breath of fresh air because he could talk to me, and he was just somebody to, you know, confide in. But you could tell that he had issues too. You know, Andre used to draw. He had like his talent was out of this world. He could draw anything you want him to. So I was into Barney and Friends at the time. So I was like, Andre, can you draw me Barney and Friends? And he was like, okay. And he would just draw it, and it was perfect. And he drew me Winnie Pooh. It was perfect. And that's how he lured me in to like him, to start coming in his room, coming around him, you know, because he liked the same stuff I liked, because he could draw, because he showed me attention. And that's the main thing I needed, was attention. Children need attention. They crave it. And I remember one day, Andre used to smoke cigarettes, and he would pace back and forth. Pacing was one of his symptoms to his mental illness. He would always pace the hallways back and forth, back and forth. And then he started pacing down the hallway. We had this long hallway in the apartment building. So he would go out there, he would pace back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so one day I asked him, can he give me a piggyback ride? And he put me up on his neck, and we was walking back and forth. But since Andre was so tall, by the time I got on top of his neck, he was even taller. So they had pipes in the building going down the hallway. And I got on his neck, and so we went down fine. But I forgot that a pipe was there, and I lift my head up, because I was supposed to be ducking my head like that. And I lift my head up, and boom, I hit my head on the pipe. And I was crying. It hurt so bad. So Andre took me in the room, and he was like, it's okay, stop crying. And so he had set me down on his lap, and he was patting me. And he was patting my back at first. And then he just started moving down and patting my butt. And I was like, hold up. This is getting a little uncomfortable, but I'm still crying. That's what then he took and went in my pants and stuck his finger up in there. And I screamed so loud, it hurt so bad. And I was, oh my God. Like, I knew in the back of my head that I should not have been around him, because my grandmother warned me. She told me that about his father raping her sister. So she was like, don't be around him. I don't know why he left it up to me to make that decision as a child, but I was just like, oh my God, I really can't be around him now. And so after that, shit wasn't the same anymore. It was like I used to hide. And every time I would see a man, I would just be scared. I never wanted to be around men. So when my dad did come around, I was like, I'm not going with him. I'm not going to his house. So I used to watch my cousins and lock them in the room, make sure that my uncles wasn't around. I thought that every man was a rapist. Every man was bad after that. So then my mom never knew. I never told nobody because I knew they was going to blame me for it. I knew they was. I didn't tell nobody until I became an adult. And so we haven't gotten to that part yet. So I don't want to let y'all know how that conversation went. But it was just, life was life, and it was crazy. And so around that time, my mom, she would come back home and try to move to another place to get her own place, because the guy who she was living with, things was getting serious between them. So I'm gonna end this therapy session right here. Make sure y'all tune in next week for the next session, and I'll let you know what happens once my mom finds a new place, and we can go from there. Thank you guys for listening to me, and I look forward to this journey with you guys in therapy.